Minimalists.
So I have a ton of books that I have had the intention of reading. There's a lot of books I still haven't read. And so I don't know. Part of me is just like, I don't know if I should get rid of them or if I should keep them with and set a goal to read them by a certain time. If I haven't read them by a certain time, then get rid of them. Just wanted to get your input as to how to move forward.
Well, I think there's a couple good options there. You just laid them out pretty simply here. It's your intention to read them, right? I think that's why we bring books in. We usually intend to read them. I've never bought a book that I didn't intend to read, although I've bought a lot of books that I never read before. And so I think we need to set some rules up here. Now, you've already established that you can do that, right? You've said, well, should I keep them with the goal that I'm going to read them? And if that makes sense and you feel that you can fulfill that objective, then yeah, sure, why not? Or should I get rid of them? And I think the answer is it really depends on your temperament. If these books are weighing you down, if they're getting in the way, if there's a lot of psychological weight, if they're taking up too much space in your home and that is causing some emotional weight, then I would say by all means, clean slate, get rid of them. But if you have some books and you know that you have an opportunity to read them, they're not just in case items, they're just for when you're able to pick them up, then yeah, I think it's important to set up a rule, to have a bit of a deadline. And it doesn't have to be the 90-90 rule, which is something we talk about in our minimalist rule book, which we'll give you a copy for free, Danielle. It's free for everyone, actually, theminimalists.com/rulebook. Or if you want the audiobook version, we just did an audiobook version for that. You can listen to that, and it's a different kind of audiobook. We recorded like 16 different mini podcasts with that to go along with each of those 16 rules for living with less. But one of those rules is the 90-90 rule. Have I used this in the last 90 days? Will I use it in the next 90 days? Now, a lot of these books, let me pick up one here. This is a book called Anything You Want by Derek Sivers. What a phenomenal book this is. And actually, this is one of there's maybe 3 books that I buy by the case. I purchase by the case, and I hand them out to people, friends, family, etc. Anyone who I think would find value from it. And this one in particular, I think it's 88 pages of Zen wisdom about business. And, well, it says it's for entrepreneurs. But anyway, this book, I can look at it and say, have I used this in the last 90 days? Will I use it in the next 90 days? If not, I give myself permission to let go. Now, maybe 90 days is not the appropriate timeline for you. With a lot of these books that you have, Danielle, of course, you haven't used them in the last 90 days, but maybe it's a 1-year rule for you. Maybe it's, hey, am I going to read this in the next year? Now, if you want to get strict, then maybe it's 90 days. Maybe it's 30 days. You give yourself the opportunity to really whittle down that collection of books you're actually going to read within the next year. And be honest with yourself. How many books are you reading a month? The average person is less than 1, which, by the way, the only numeral less than 1 is 0. And so the average person reads next to nothing. And so if you can commit to just reading 1 book a year, then keep 12 books that you have. You don't even need to add any more to the collection, and you can get rid of everything else. And by the way, you can always bring something back in if you absolutely find that, wow, I missed this for some reason. Now, I'll talk to you about some of the books that I hold on to for longer than that fall outside of a 90-90 rule. And that's a lot of reference books or just some of my favorite books. Today on the Maximal, we're actually going to go over my 17, or maybe it's 14 favorite books. I haven't decided which yet. Also, 6 books I wish I would have written. And those books I go back to all the time. One of those books is right here. This is David Foster Wallace's first essay collection. It's called A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again. Holding this up for the cameras on YouTube. And I think it's a masterpiece of a book. Essays and arguments, especially the experiential essays that take place throughout this book. The title essay, there's another one called A Ticket to the Fair. It's actually, that's the shorter version. That's the Harper's version. But there is an essay in here about the county fair in Illinois, which is hilarious and informative. And you know, there's something about a collection like that I keep going back to. I may not read it cover to cover, but I go back to it very regularly. And my wife hasn't read a whole lot of David Foster Wallace, so from time to time when we're doing our morning reading, I'll just pop out one of his books and dive into an essay, read a paragraph or a page or two, and have that shared experience together. There are other books, like reference books, that I use all the time. I mean, this book right here, which I'll hold up, is like a doorstop. Getting a workout just lifting it. This is Gardner's Modern American Usage. It's a usage dictionary. Now, it's not a dictionary in the traditional sense. Like, you don't look up words necessarily, but you look up parts of speech, and it directs you how to better write, how to better use those parts of speech. So as a writer, I'll often look something up. Let me give you an example. I'll just flip to a page really quickly, and here it talks about compose versus comprise, and what's the difference between. We often use that word comprised incorrectly, right? I'll say, Sean's outfit was comprised of a shirt, shoes, and pants. That's the incorrect way to use the word. You would say it's composed, right? So a usage dictionary shows you how to correctly use standard American English. And so that's something I go back to regularly. There are other books that I use as inspiration for when I'm writing, and we're going to go through some of those on the Maximal episode. But Danielle, I'm going to move on to another question. I hope you enjoy that copy of the Minimalist Rule Book, either the audio book or the free ebook over at theminimalists.com/rulebook.